All right, good morning, CMASC viewers. I'm here with the dudes, Tim, Nick, Will. It's good to see you guys. I missed last Friday. It was my daughter's birthday. I think it was a good enough reason to miss, but it was a great episode, and I'm happy to be here. So today, we're going to be talking about reflections on the Frad interview that I did that came out last Wednesday. I filmed it in September. And so, love to hear your guys' thoughts and points of what you think we got right, maybe what we got wrong, maybe what I maybe should have doubled down on a little bit more. And after taking some time to reflect on it, obviously, it goes without saying, I'm really appreciative of Matt and Josiah and their hospitality. It was a really cool experience, and they were great guys. It was a great conversation, and it was a bit to be honest, I'm a pretty recent revert. I reverted in May 7th. I got confirmed, and it's kind of been like a tidal wave of these kinds of opportunities. And he's got one of the biggest platforms online. So it was a really, really cool thing. Very grateful for it. And the conversation I thought was awesome as well. So some initial reflections for me looking back on the conversation wasn't a whole lot. I did pray, and I did multiple rosaries on the way on the flight, and on the way to the studio, for the Holy Spirit to, kind of guide my words, tame my tongue, restrain my speech, point it in the right direction. And, despite the full day of travel, and it was quite exhausting because it was like the whole day, me getting from Alberta to Steubenville. I'm like, man, how coherent and how sharp am I going to be? But I think reflecting back, I did okay. The one point that comes to mind, that's front of mind, that we were discussing before we decided to hit record here, I wish I would have emphasized that probably the most integral piece of me reverting was the patriarchy in the church, was the papacy. And I didn't mention that, and I wish that I did, because we see the father in the chair, right? We know Christ, the ultimate patriarch. He left a visible patriarchy. This is why we're on here on CMASC doing what we do, having this conversation. And the other thing too was, it was clear to me after that conversation that I try to represent what patriarchy is not, what feminism is, what red pill is, but what patriarchy is not. And even in the over nuancing of it, there was still cope and still seethe. And it became abundantly clear that there's no way to have this conversation gently. And it kind of further affirmed what we're doing here with CMASC. And yeah, we're heavy-handed, but it's a heavy-handed and necessary response to how destructive and demonic this influence of feminism has been on the culture and on the church and on marriages in general. So those are my initial reflections. There's obviously more stuff I could say. It's been an incredible experience doing all the social media stuff. The fact that I'm even on here with you guys on CMASC, used to be a long-time viewer here on the panel, been on Frad, doing the coaching thing, have this inner circle project. It's just a testament to God's grace, and I think really, I don't know, for whatever reason, using me in this quote unquote space to make an impact. And I hope that I did that, and specifically speaking to the red pill guys that maybe feel a little alienated. And my intention to go on there was not to go on and heavy-handedly bash these guys like I've done before, because they get way more things correct than feminism ever could. And Will, you said something really good before we hit record again, was those red pill truths are illuminated in the church. Maybe cool to get into that, but would love to hear your guys' thoughts and reflections on the episode as well. We can start with you, Will.
So I just want to say, first of all, that I think it's an understatement, Mike, to say that you were kind of clear and good energy. I thought it was amazing all the way through after that flight, and for the length of the interview as well, that you spoke as you did. Like, really impressive. So
It was.
hats off to you for that. And the other thing was, it was quite like emotional to listen to as well, because you spoke about some stuff that is very dark and gritty in some ways. And I've mentioned before that suicide is the top killer of men between 18 and 45, I think it is. More than heart disease, more than cancer, more than anything else, suicide is. And I was just thinking, listening to you, how great it is that you're here and actually doing this stuff, because it could have gone that way, right? From what you were talking about with the void, the despair, the suicidal thoughts, you might never have made it out. So glory to God that you did, and that you're doing the work that you're doing. but being honest about that and actually going into that detail on a personal level, that's why I think guys resonate with you. Like, you had the balls to say that stuff.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, man. I feel like in order to make the most of these opportunities that are given to me, that still sometimes blow my mind, whether it's CMASC or Pints or whatever the businesses that I have, is really revealing all of those innermost parts that probably most people don't want to talk about. And it's not to, you know, bring glory to me, but it's to point people to the truth of not just Christ, but Christ and his church. Like, there were some topics in there that I almost considered like not talking about. You know, for example, you know, I got, you know, some people were making fun of me for the erectile dysfunction bit, but I'm like, there's 100,000 guys that listen to that episode, and 99,000 of them are like, "Oh, dude, that's me too." So it's like, it's got to be one of us has got to be talking about this. So I really appreciate it, Will. It's tremendous.
What's so important, Mike, is that you're actually living out the humility without which masculinity is impossible anyway. And for anyone thinking that having a little snigger about whatever Mike has said, like, don't forget that at the general judgment, everyone's going to know everything you've done anyway, bitch. Yeah. Right? We're all going to find out, like, because that's how you know.
Well, I figured a little bit, but it's just, I giggle when someone says titmouse. So when you say,
but, no, the point is that he's not afraid to actually just face reality and move forward from it. Like, this is me. Yeah. You can't push someone over. You can't hit someone to the ground when they're already on the knees. It's like the Fulton Sheen line about that. Yep. So Mike just does that in public, which is great. I love that about him. Now, the point about the papacy and having the father in the chair and that being the reason for the reversion, that was really important too. You know, we had the joke before about how orthodoxy is like multiple husbands and there's no real central authority there with the power to call the brothers to the table, etc. And it made me think as well, Mike, about why that's the answer to this covert trad feminist idea that I'll start leading when he's perfect. Like, just give me the perfect man, then I'll submit. Because you understood that it doesn't matter that any given pope is imperfect in all kinds of ways. As a man, you still submit to the authority, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, isn't it not symbolic of marriage and household patriarchy, where it's like, regardless of like who this guy is, I've got to submit to the bride of Christ, which is the church, and whoever is occupying that seat. And my obligation is to pray and is to be obedient. He's not calling me to do anything that is spiritually dangerous to my salvation. I understand what it takes to be a proper Catholic and to do all the right things in order to, you know, the hope and the promise of the life to come. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go out and start calling him a heretic and all these other things. I'm actually quite careful of how I speak about not just Francis, but even some of the priests that I know that you could call quote unquote boomer priests. But who am I to say as the laity? Who am I to say as a member of the church and to be disobedient? And is that not symbolic of the household patriarchy? If I were to be rebellious and start spewing off at the mouth and think that I know better, that's no different than the trad feminist wife that says, well, if he's just got to love Christ like Christ loved the church, and if he's becomes worthy enough, then I'll submit to him. It's the same spirit of rebellion. They're too emotionally. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would say, the household patriarch has a power that, in constitutional terms, we would say is plenary. You know, he can tell his family anything to do, whereas your bishop has only a very, very partialized power over your day-to-day life. It's really only an ecclesial power. So I would say that it's, if your bishop tells you to wear, you know, a certain kind of dungarees or whatever, then you don't have to listen. And one thing you said, Mike, also, you were so good. You're just crisp as an autumn apple. You're really good. It was really impressive. And it was an understatement to partialize that. But I would say, a second ago, you said submit to the bride of Christ. It's really that as part of the bride of Christ, the church, we all submit to the vicar of Christ, who kind of stands in the place of Peter, who stands in the place of Christ. But yeah, it was an amazing performance. I've done that trek before, and I think I went on Frad's show with 3 hours sleep, and you were so much crisper than me, much more autumn apple like.
Yep.
Yeah, I playfully accused you of performance enhancing drugs, and you said it was nicotine and caffeine. Because my fiance and I and Tim and I were marveling at the recall of full quotes and references to stuff. Like I pride myself on that, and it was really impressive. And yeah, and the energy too is very positive, very measured. The point about being nuanced, I feel bad because you tried so hard to be just surgical. And I'm reminded of this Eminem lyric. The chorus is, "I am whatever you say I am, and if I wasn't, why would I say I am? In the paper, the news, every day I am. Ha, radio won't even play my jam." And every time Tim and I like talk about this stuff and how we sort of have gotten to a point where the presentation of our views is just like pisses 99.9% of people off. It's like, it's because we've gotten to that point where like we've tried to say, here's what I'm not saying, here's what I am saying, allow me to parse this through, and then they're like still screeching. So it's like, all right, screw you, I am whatever you say that I am.
Right.
And at that point, then what I've seen with various pundits who have just gone full bore with that is it ends up working in their favor ultimately.
Yep.
Because to Will's point, like they see your humility, like you have this jacked, tatted up guy with absolute humility and like perfect clarity of mind. And they're like, wait a second, I need to check my assumptions here. Like he just said something that pissed me off, but he did it with like a peaceful smile and like kind words. How do I hate him? I really need to hate him here. There's got to be something that I can hate about this man. And so I do think that's where like the humility is really important. But why I guess I've sort of given up on trying to like meet people where they're at, broadly on an individual level. Like I remember I was driving my fiance and her friend around, and I made like some very joking, like offhanded comment, like women shouldn't be allowed to read. And it was a full joke, obviously. But my fiance's friend was like, wait a second, what are you saying? And when I realized like in her voice that she was like about to believe that I believed that and was genuinely curious about like education and the woman's place or whatever, then I like dropped the bit entirely and engaged with her with sincerity. But up until that point, like I don't care anymore because everyone's just gonna say Tim and I just joked about this, like it would be so much easier if we were misogynists. Like if we actually hated women, things would be so much easier for us, but we don't. And like
Yeah.
that's